Let's just get right into it. In this video, I'm going to talk about the many problems I had with Fate Winx Club Saga and what I liked about it. Unfortunately, there were a lot of things that bugged me about this show, which is why I'm going to start off with that list before going into what actually made it worth the watch and what I hope they do in season 2 if they get one. I'll be using pictures instead of videos because I saw that other people had problems with Netflix copyrighting their footage, and I don't really want that to happen to me, so sorry in advance, but hopefully it doesn't make that much of a difference. To start off, I have to say that I thought the show was enjoyable. Yes, it had one too many tropes. Sometimes I felt like it was trying to relate to teenagers a little too hard, and some writing choices were questionable. But it was still a decent show. It was CW-esque, if you're into that. So it was fine. But to explain, I'll start with the problems. And just a heads up, there will be spoilers. The dark aesthetic. First of all, why do they call the Winx Club if they use nothing from the cartoon? I know this has been said again and again, but literally that's what made the Winx Club unique in the first place. It was all the colorful elements. It was what made the fairy world look magical. And I seriously don't understand why producers and writers think that all teenagers want is a dark, mysterious show. It's been done over and over again, and I don't want to keep seeing it. That alone does not make this show terrible, but it's just disappointing when there are so many shows that look exactly the same, and they have the opportunity to make this different and unique, and they had a following to back it up, but they didn't. The whitewashing. This is something that was critiqued early on with the first teaser trailer and has already been talked about by literally everyone, so I won't spend too much time on it because we all know that the creators of this show screwed up big time. But I still have to mention it because what were they thinking? They try to make up for it by making Tara Flora's cousin, I guess to try to show that Flora exists in the same universe, but why couldn't they have included her in the first place? I do like that they made Tara plus size, but then it felt like that was her only character trait. The least they could have done was made her less of a stereotype. And to make it worse, one of the show's few diverse characters, Aisha, she literally has zero character development. So that leads me to my next point. Lack of character development in a lot of the characters. So let me start off with Aisha. I literally don't understand her character at all. In the beginning, it makes sense that she's helping Bloom, more so than the others at least, since no one else has any reason to help her in the first place, but I'll get to that later. She saw Bloom lose control of her powers, and she was the one that told Bloom she was a changeling, so it makes sense that at first she felt protective over her because of that, and she wanted to help. However, she literally becomes Bloom's babysitter, and it doesn't make sense considering Bloom was never a friend to her. Especially when Aisha was having problems with her magic, Bloom offered her no support. So it's a very one-sided relationship, and it just doesn't make sense why they're friends at all. Also, Aisha's relationship with all the other girls, except maybe Musa, didn't really seem believable either because it didn't appear to be based off of anything. Especially in the end, when they do end up forgiving her for telling on them to Miss Dowling, it almost feels like they shouldn't have because nothing has shown us, the audience, how they became friends in the first place. Next, Tara. Like I mentioned, yes, it would have been great if she was Latina, but let me remind you that it is not the actress's fault. I found out recently that when the teaser trailer came out, people bullied the actress so much on social media that she had to put her Instagram on private. That is not okay. Come on, people. Let's stop bullying people on the internet. And if anyone deserves critique, and again, critique, not bullying, it would have been the show's creators and writers, not the actress herself. Anyway, like I said, I thought it was great that Tara was plus size. I loved that. But what I didn't like was that it seemed to be the only thing about her. We have seen her character over and over again in shows, and I personally don't want to see a girl like her insecure, badly dressed, and bullied by others because of her weight. I loved that she stood up for herself, but why couldn't she have been confident and fashionable? Why couldn't her personality have gone against the stereotype? I also feel like she developed no real relationship with any of the characters except maybe Musa and Dane when they were friends. I should also mention Riven. I still don't understand why he hates the school so much because he never explains it. It just makes it really hard for me to fully sympathize with him when I have no idea why he feels that way. And I really feel like the writers are making us root for him and want to understand that he's a good guy but in the wrong path. But I don't see it because I have learned nothing about him. Bloom as a character. So Bloom really annoyed me, and it's mostly because she's the exact template of the "I'm not like other girls" trope. She arrives and all of a sudden everyone wants to be her friend and everyone is interested in her. But like, for what reason? Like, I don't even understand why any of her roommates like her, because she forms no real relationship with any of them, honestly. They're all willing to help her in the name of friendship, but it honestly just starts to look like it's out of a sense of duty because they all live together in the Winx suite, not because of real friendship. And let's talk about Bloom and Sky's relationship. So I'm all about love at first sight, but only when it's done right. And in this case, it wasn't. Sky instantly became infatuated with Bloom, and their relationship grew out of nothing. It didn't feel organic. It felt forced. And I truly believe that it's not that hard to have it well done, so hear me out. In episode 5, Silva asked Sky to start spying on Bloom for him. But why couldn't this have been something that happened in the first episode? It would have made so much more sense if he was instructed to get close to Bloom from the beginning, and it would have made sense because Dowling was already unsure about her since she found her and brought her to the school in the first place. So it would have been great to know that early on so that their weird relationship would have had a reason as to why they got so close so fast. The fashion. While it didn't particularly bother me while I was watching it, it just made me sad to know the lost potential that this show could have had in the wardrobe department. First of all, why did they choose to have Bloom have 100 versions of the same leather jacket? And it wasn't just her. It looks like the costume designer wanted everyone to have one. And Stella, she's supposed to be a princess, a fashion icon, and she even says in the first episode that people expect her to care how she looks. But all of her outfits made her look like a teacher. They look dated and they're just not that cute or special. If she hadn't outright said she was meant to have good outfits, I don't know if I would have known, honestly. And I don't mind each character having a color. It happens a lot on TV shows and even movies. But couldn't it be a bit more subtle? By the last few episodes, it started to become so much. That's the only color each character would wear. The world in general. This might just be my personal opinion, but I think they had the opportunity to make the show completely part of this new magical world, which means they didn't have to include social media at all. And they also didn't have to include the very cringy Instagram comments they made throughout the show. I honestly think that they had the opportunity to just create this magical world and it didn't have to mirror our real world at all. And it would have been cool to see how unique it is in that way. I also think using social media and TV and film takes away from a lot of character development because it's all one-sided and there's no confrontation. And I think it just kind of sucks watching characters like look at their screen. So it didn't have to be included, and I don't understand why they did that in the first place. I also think they could have done a better job introducing the world in general because we really got very little exposure to it. And it would have been nice to see. It would have made the world more special and the show more unique. Okay, now let's get to the parts that I thought were good. The first is the acting. Overall, everyone did a decent job considering the terrible dialogue. I think that really made the show enjoyable in the first place. If the actors hadn't done such a good job, I think the show would have sucked so much more. The second is the special effects, which were also pretty good. Even the transformation scene was pretty decent. Obviously, it wasn't Marvel type quality, but I think they did a really good job making the world look real given their budget probably. I also really like how they made their eye colors change when they were using their powers because it really made it obvious to the audience that they were doing that. I also think that the characters that were given a decent backstory and character development were interesting, Musa being the only one that actually had that, and that's why she was my favorite. I really liked her relationship with Sam. I thought it was cute, natural, and I was rooting for them. I also really liked how she ultimately ended up using her power to save him in the end. However, I didn't really love the fact that we only found out her mother died moments before she had to do it. I know it came up once before in the season, but it would have been nice to know a long time before she had to actually try to cope with that trauma, because it didn't feel like it was that impactful when we only found out moments before, and it just came off as lazy writing in my opinion. And like I said before, I really liked her relationship with Sam and with the other girls. I thought those were the strongest relationships of the entire show. And I also think her power was honestly the coolest. When it was first introduced, I thought it was like the least powerful and I wasn't that interested in it. But throughout the entire season, I became so invested in her and her powers. And I think that if they get a season 2, I hope she'll have even greater control and maybe even control other people's emotions, maybe eventually even their minds, who knows. I think her power has a lot of potential and I think it's pretty cool. She's definitely my favorite character. I also think there's a lot of potential for season 2. I think they did a good job of setting up for the possible next season, and I think they had really good cliffhangers, especially with Sky's dad being alive and Rosalind killing Dowling. That was pretty shocking, and I would love to see what happens next. But that's pretty much it for the positive aspects of the show. I know that list is short, but it's mostly because, like I said before, this show is kind of like every other teen show out there. It's pretty much basic, which is why it's so disappointing considering there were so many people looking forward to this show. And I think it's funny if you look back to the first teaser trailer that came out that received so much backlash. I think that trailer lowered so many people's expectations. I think it's the reason that so many people have called the show, fine or enjoyable. Because honestly, I know for me personally, it definitely lowered my expectations so much that I thought the show was going to be terrible. And in the end, it was fine, but I do think they have so much potential to be even better, and I do hope they get a season 2 to improve upon all the aspects I listed, especially the relationships and the character development. I think that as long as we care more about the characters, this show will be so popular and so great. So I do hope they get a season 2. But let me know what you think and comment down below if you like the show or not.